හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 27th of February 2024. Flight plight. Airport and aviation services scrambling to solve more Sri Lankan Airlines operated flight delays and cancellations. Opposition versus Speaker. Opposition leader goes after the Speaker of Parliament again, accusing the Speaker of constitutional violations in approving the new IGP's appointment. Cabinet decisions. Cabinet approves President's proposal to create a Children of Gaza Fund for Gaza violence victims. Engine of growth. ADB pledges to provide 20 billion rupees in capital support to Sri Lanka's SME sector. And island heat. Health officials issue a severe warning against the prevailing heat as conditions intensify.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9 with Indivari Amuata and Mahish Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us once again on First at 9 at Derana 24. Good evening, Mahish.
Very good evening, Indivari. From yesterday's, I think, even during the weekend, we've been talking about Sri Lankan Airlines, and apparently there's another update tonight as well with regard to certain flights that was delayed. Lots of stories coming up with regard to a national carrier.
This is also amidst the fact that we are looking for a prospective investor to revive this ailing airline. A massive burden to the national coffers, the Sri Lankan Airlines, plus a number of other state-owned enterprises. But the kind of recognition that Sri Lankan Airlines had internationally is questioned today because of these delays. And
a rat. There was a rat in one of the flights, apparently trying to still figure out whether it's an international rat or a local rat. But,
and oh my God, the heat is unbearable. Absolutely. Yes, so we have to really be careful. This is also one of our headline stories. Drink plenty of water. Keep yourselves dehydrated because this
hydrated.
Sorry.
Don't dehydrate yourself.
Thank you for that. It's time we get on with the top stories for tonight.
Now, more flight delays plague Sri Lankan Airlines today, inconveniencing hundreds of passengers with delayed flight bound for destinations including Chennai, Jakarta, Seoul and Dubai.
Despite updates about the airworthiness of the crafts being used, whispers about ineptitude of staff continue to harm the carrier as the airline suffered one of its worst administrative days in the recent past.
Now, addressing a media briefing today, Chairman of the Airport and Aviation Services Lanka Limited, Athula Galkatia, confirmed that steps will be taken to address the situation at the Bandaranaike International Airport.
Over the past few days, several flights belonging to Sri Lanka's national carrier, Sri Lankan Airlines, have been facing inordinate delays due to various reasons. On the 25th of February, a flight from Lahore to Katunayake was delayed due to the discovery of a rodent on the flight. Two more flights, one from Abu Dhabi, was delayed due to faulty parking brakes, while the other was delayed due to engine failure. With this being the overarching theme, operations on more Sri Lankan Airlines flights were delayed during the day today. Flights UL 122 between Chennai and Colombo, UL 364 between Colombo and Jakarta, UL 314 between Colombo and Kuala Lumpur, and UL 189 from Colombo to Dhaka were delayed. It was also reported that flights bearing numbers UL 265, UL 470, UL 103, UL 225 and UL 229 operating from Colombo to Riyadh, Seoul, Malé, Dubai and Kuwait respectively will also arrive at those airports late due to delays faced in departing. Further, Sri Lankan Airlines have also cancelled flights operating between Chennai and Bangalore. Against this backdrop, the Airport and Aviation Services announced a special plan would be initiated to address the situation at Bandaranaike International Airport.
එක ගුවන් යානයක් මොකක් හරි කාර්මික දෝෂයක් නිසා ගමන් වාරයක අපහසුතාවයක් ඇති වුණොත් ඩිලේ එකක් වුණොත් එහෙම ඒක නිවැරදි කිරීමට දවස් 5ක් 6ක් ගත වෙනවා මොකද හැම වෙලාවෙම මේ අපිට ගුවන් සේවා සමාගමවල තියෙන ගුවන් යාන හැම වෙලාවෙම පියාසර කරනවා ඒ ආපහු පියාසර කර ලංකාවට ආපු ගුවන් යානයක් තමයි නැවත තවත් ස්ථානයකට පියාසර කිරීමට හැකියාව තියෙන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සමාගම සම්පූර්ණ මේක සැලසුම් ගත කරමින් පවතිනවා නමුත් ඔවුන් හරි අපහසුතාවයට පත් වෙලායි සිටිනවා ඔවුන්ගේ ගුවන් යාන සංඛ්‍යාව ඉතාමත්ම අඩු නිසා එතකොට ඒ ක්‍රයිසිස් එක මැනේජ් කරන්න අපි උපරිම උත්සාහයක් ගනිමින් පවතිනවා
Watch Other Derana tonight at 10 p.m. for a response from the Minister of Aviation, Nimal Siripal Silva. Moving on to our next story, also making headlines. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa has alleged that the Speaker of Parliament, Mahindayapa Abewardena, violated the Constitution for a second time by voting in favour of the permanent appointment of Deshabandhu Tennakoon as the Inspector General of Police at the Constitutional Council.
Now, the opposition leader stated that the Speaker's vote was unconstitutional on the basis that the Speaker is only allowed to vote as the tiebreaker in the event of a deadlock.
In this instance, the 4 votes in favour and 2 against the appointment and a further 2 abstaining, Premadasa argued that there was no basis for the Speaker to cast his vote.
Now, this comes against a backdrop where opposition leader Sajith Premadasa had already accused the Speaker of granting approval for the Online Safety Act in unconstitutional manner.
After serving as Acting Inspector General of Police for almost 3 months, Senior DIG Deshabandhu Tennakoon was officially and permanently appointed Sri Lanka's 36th Inspector General of Police. He received his letter of appointment yesterday from President Secretary Saman Ekanayaka. However, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa alleged that the appointment of Deshabandhu Tennakoon as the IGP is unconstitutional and that Speaker of Parliament Mahindayapa Abewardena has to be held responsible for violating the Constitution. In a statement, the opposition leaders stated that during the recent meeting of the Constitutional Council, 4 members of the council voted in favour of the appointment, 2 voted against it and 2 others abstained from voting, while highlighting that the Speaker of Parliament is only entitled to vote as a tiebreaker to break a deadlock. Premadasa stated that Speaker Mahindayapa Abewardena voted in favour by assuming that those who abstained from voting were against the appointment, which he termed a breach of the Constitution. Article 41E, paragraph 5 of the Constitution says that the chairman or other members presiding shall not have an original vote. However, in the event of an equality of votes on any question for decision at any meeting of the council, the chairman or other member presiding at such a meeting shall have a casting vote. Addressing this issue at Samagi Jana Balavega's Sakwela program, the opposition leader said that the Speaker of Parliament had thus violated the Constitution for a second time.
ස්ථිරවම අනුමත කිරීමක් හෝ ස්ථිරවම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කිරීමක් වෙන්නේ ඡන්ද 5ක් ලැබුණකොට කතානායකවරයාට පුළුවන් එයාගේ ඡන්දේ පාවිච්චි කරන්න එකම එක අවස්ථාවකයි 4 බෙදීමක් ආවොත් ඊයේ 4 බෙදීමක් උනේ නැහැ අපි රැස්වීම අවසන් වෙලා නැගිටලා යනකොටත් තීන්දුව උනේ 4ක් පක්ෂව දෙන්නෙක් විරුද්ධව දෙන්නෙක් ඇබ්ස්ටේන් අපි ගියයින් පස්සේ ජනාධිපති ලේකම් කාර්යාලයට යවලා තියෙන නිගමනය තමයි 4 කතානායකයාගේ තීරක ඡන්දය නාම යෝජනාවට පක්ෂව. පැහැදිලිවම කතානායකවරයා මේ රටේ උත්තරීතර නීතිය කඩ කරලා තියෙනවා. දෙවෙනි වතාවටත් ඔහු ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව උල්ලංඝනය කරා.
The Supreme Court has postponed the hearing of a fundamental rights petition filed against IGP Deshabandhu Tennakoon during his tenure as the acting IGP until the 2nd of April.
Now, the petition was filed by the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Cardinal Malcolm Brunjit, and a group of civil society organizations requesting that the court issue an order preventing Tennakoon's appointment as the IGP.
During the hearing today, the court ordered petitioners to present more evidence before the court, since the situation has now changed compared to what it was when the petition was filed.
A fundamental rights petition filed by Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Cardinal Malcolm Brunjit, and members of several civil society organizations in December last year, requesting the Supreme Court to issue an order preventing Deshabandhu Tennakoon from being appointed as Inspector General of Police, was taken up for hearing before a 3-member judge bench this morning. Presenting his submissions before the Supreme Court judge bench and on behalf of the Attorney General, Additional Solicitor General Nerin Pulle said that the consideration of the petition can no longer continue due to the appointment of Tennakon as the permanent IGP. Appearing on behalf of IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon, President's Counsel Romesh De Silva said that his client was appointed upon the recommendation of the Constitutional Council and added that if there are doubts, a separate case can be filed against his appointment as the IGP. However, President's Counsel Salia Pires, who appeared on behalf of civil activist and attorney-at-law Manoj Nanayakkara, said that this case was decided to be heard today by taking the expiration of Deshabandhu Tennakon's tenure as the acting IGP on the 29th of February into account. He said that his appointment before the expiration of his tenure as the acting IGP was a challenge that was made against the rule of law in this country, and he added that there is no legal obstacle to continuing this case further. Meanwhile, President's Counsel Jeffrey Alagaratnam, who appeared on behalf of the victims of the Easter Sunday attack, told the judge bench that 2 of the members of the Constitutional Council have voted against the appointment of Tennakon as the IGP. While highlighting that the judge bench is unable to arrive at a decision since the situation has changed compared to what it was when filing the petition, Justice Preeti Padman Surasena ordered the petitioners to present the information pertaining to the appointment of Deshabandhu as the IGP, thereby ordering the case to be taken up for hearing again on the 2nd of April 2024.
The Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal made by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to create a Children of Gaza Fund in aid of suffering children in the Gaza area. Echoing this further, the President's media unit said that all ministries and government institutions have been directed to forego iftar celebrations and instead contribute to this fund. Meanwhile, in another decision, the Cabinet approved a partnership with the Asian Development Bank to provide 20 billion rupees to provide capital support to the micro, small and medium enterprises in the country. With that, here's a look at other Cabinet decisions taken yesterday.
The Cabinet of Ministers has agreed to a proposal to acquire the support of the Asian Development Bank in providing working capital support for the small and medium enterprise sector of the country as a relief to the difficulties faced by the entities in running operations due to the economic downturn. The proposed program is intended to provide credit facilities to micro to medium-scale enterprises through licensed commercial banks and specialized banks at concessional interest rates. Accordingly, a total of 20 billion rupees will be allocated for the project, of which 15 billion rupees will be used to strengthen existing and new enterprises, with the remaining 5 billion to be used to support enterprises under the non-performing loan category. In another decision, Cabinet has given approval to a proposal by the President to implement the national tourism policy in the country. The policy was first drafted in September of 2023 and was subjected to further review by a committee consisting of experts in the field of tourism. The Cabinet of Ministers agreed to grant 2 blocks of land on long-term lease within the premises of Water's Edge in Batramulla, amounting to 2 roods and 30.89 perches and 4 acres, 2 roods and 1.6 perches, respectively to the Navy for boat riding and rescue camp training activities and to Asoka Vidyalaya Colombo 10 to be used as a playground. The Cabinet of Ministers in another decision granted approval to direct the legal draftsman to draft the Bill of State Finance Management and to entrust the powers to the Treasury Secretary to appoint a specialists committee for inaugurating the formulation of financial regulations until the legal draftsman prepared the proposed draft bill. Prior to this, approval had been granted to bring in a new bill to manage state finances at a meeting held on May of 2023, and accordingly a fundamental draft has been prepared under the consultancy and policy guidance of a supervisory committee appointed under the co-chairing of 2 budget departments and deputy treasury secretaries by the State Finance Department.
ඔබතුමාලා රාජ්‍ය මූල්‍ය කළමනාකරණයට සහ රාජ්‍ය මූල්‍ය විනය පවත්වාගෙන යාමට සෑහෙන බලවත් උත්සාහයක් ගනිමින් ඉන්නවා. ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ බැංකුවේ නිලධාරීන්ගේ වැටුප් ගෙවීම සහ වැටුප් අනුපාතයන් තීරණය කිරීම, වැටුප් වර්ධක ලබා දීම මේ පනත් වලට මූල්‍ය රෙගුලාසි වලට අනුගත නොවන තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා. ඔබතුමාලට මේ පනතෙන්වත් අයව මේ අසුරවා ගන්න පුළුවන් වේද මේකේ?
බෑ. එහෙම කරන්න බෑ. මොකද මධ්‍යම බැංකුව වෙනම නීතියකින් සම්මත වෙච්ච ස්වාධීන මූල්‍ය ආයතන. අර ජනාධිපතිතුමා මේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට දැනුම් දුන්නා. ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ බැංකුවත් මුදල් මණ්ඩලයත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට කරුණු ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම සඳහා සූදානම්ෙන් සිටින බව. ඒ නිසා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කමිටු වලට ඉදිරියේදී කරුණු ඉදිරිපත් කරන බව කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට දැනුම් දුන්නා.
IMF ණය වාරිකය අපිට ලැබිලා තියෙනවද? එසේ නොලැබිලා නම් ඒ කවදද ලැබෙන්නේ?
තුන්වෙනි වාරිකය ලැබීම පිළිබඳ සාකච්ඡාව සඳහා ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය මූල්‍ය අරමුදලේ නියෝජිත පිරිස් ලංකාවට පැමිණෙනවා. මුදල් අමාත්‍යතුමා වශයෙන් අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා මේවර සඳහන් කරලා තිබුණා මේ විපක්ෂයේ ඉන්න නායක කාරකාදීන්ටත් අවශ්‍ය නම් සාකච්ඡාවට අවස්ථාවක් ලබා දෙන්නම් කියලා.
Finally, Cabinet has approved a proposal made by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to grant a special fund in aid of Gaza violence victims, with directions given to government ministries and institutions to forego iftar celebrations and contribute to this fund.
ඊයේ දිනේ විශේෂයෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා සඳහන් කළ යෝජනාවක් ගාසා තීරයේ යුද්ධමය හා අනිකුත් අවාසිදායක තත්ත්වයන් තුළ කුසට සම්පූර්ණ ආහාර වේලක් නැති විලිවසා ගැනීමට හරියට වස්ත්‍රයක් නැති පිටි අතරකින් වටවෙච්ච තමන්ගේ කියාගන්න නිවාණක් නැති දරුවන්ට සාන සැලැස්වීම සඳහා ලංකා ආණ්ඩුව ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් මිලියනයක් එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සංවිධාන හරහා ප්‍රදානය කරන්නත් ඒ වගේම ලංකාවේ මුස්ලිම් බැතිමතුන් ඉස්ලාමික බැතිමතුන් විවිධ උත්සව සඳහා සමරන මුදලුත් ඒ අරමුදලට යොදලා ගාසා තීරයේ දරුවන්ට පිටවීම සඳහා ඒ අරමුදල් යොදා ගන්න ලෙස විශේෂ අරමුදලක් හදන්න රජයෙන් තීරණය කළ බව කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට දැනුම් දුන්න යෝජනාවක් වශයෙන්.
In another headline story, well, despite the Department of Meteorology yesterday announcing a subsidizing of the prevailing hot weather, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Center of the Department of Meteorology today issued a heat advisory alerting the general public of rising temperatures in certain parts of the country.
As per the advisory, heat index or the temperature felt on the human body is expected to rise up to caution level at certain parts in northwestern, western and southern provinces and the Ratnapura districts during the day tomorrow.
The Met Department once again cautioned the general public of rising temperatures in certain parts of the country. Issuing a heat advisory this evening, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Center of the Met Department stated that heat index or the temperature felt on the human body is expected to rise up to caution levels in certain parts in northwestern, western and southern provinces and Ratnapura district tomorrow. Accordingly, residents of areas including Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, Gaul, Mathara, Hambantota, Ratnapura, Kurunagala and Putlam will experience high temperature felt on the human body. Per the issued advisory, this level of temperature is likely to result in fatigue, with continuing activity most likely to result in heat cramps. The general public has been advised to remain hydrated and increase the consumption of water and liquid food, with a further request to limit strenuous outdoor activities and wear lightweight and white or light-colored clothing. This development meanwhile comes after the Met Department yesterday announced that several parts of the country are likely to experience rains commencing from today onwards.
Well, the government has decided to suspend the procedures to acquire properties of debtors of banks under Section 4 of the Recovery of Loans by Banks Special Provision Act, also known as Parate Law, until December this year. Minister of Justice Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa says that the decision was taken to provide relief to local businessmen by giving them a grace period to pay off debts without being a burden to the banking system. He also pointed out that the profits of the commercial banks in the country have skyrocketed due to the benefit incurred by Parate Law to banks in the recent past.
බලය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරමින් දහස් සංඛ්‍යාත දේපල ගනුදෙනුකරුවන්ගේ කුණගෙන බැංකු තිබෙනවා. අපිත් නිරීක්ෂණය කරපු දෙයක් තියෙනවා. සමහර බැංකු මේක ඉතා බරපතල විදිහට අවභාවිතා කරනවා. ඒ අනුව අපි නැවත වතාවක් ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ මුදල් ඇමතිවරයා විදිහට ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා ඊයේ දිනේදී එතුමා අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩල සංදේශයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා මේ අවුරුද්දේ දෙසැම්බර් 15 වෙනිදා වෙනතෙක් මේ වෙන්දේසි ක්‍රමය නතර කරන්න තීන්දුවක් ගත්තා. ඒ අනුව පනතට අදාළ සංශෝධනයක් තාවකාලික විධිවිධාන පනත් කෙටුම්පතක් අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා. හැම බැංකුවම විශාල ලාභයක් පත්තරවල 6 මාසයකට වරක් දානවනේ. මිලියන 5යි 10යි 15යි 20යි කියලා දානවා. ලාභය හුඟක් වැඩි වෙලා තියෙන මේ පරාටි ක්‍රමයත් එක්ක. ඇයි ඉතින් මිලියන 100 දුන්න ලෝන් එකට 200 විකුණ ගන්නවා 300ට විකුණ ගන්නවා. ඒව රිගුලේෂන් බැංකුවට එනවා නම් ඒකත් හොඳයි. හැබැයි ඒකත් අතරමැදියෝ ඉන්නවා එතනත්. යම් ආකාරයකට යම් ගනුදෙනුකරුවෙක් ලබාගත් ණය නිසි පරිදි ගෙවන්න බැරි වුණා නම් ඇත්තටම ඒක ඔහු හිතාමතා කරපු දෙයක්ද? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔහුට ණය ගෙවා ගන්න බැරි වුණත් යම් කිසි ආකාරයකට ඒක ප්‍රතිසංවිධානය කරලා ව්‍යාපාරයේ රීස්ට්‍රක්චර් කරගෙන ඉදිරියට යන්න අවස්ථාව දෙනවද? උමන හෝ අවස්ථාවක් නැත්නම් ඔහුගේ බරපතල නොසලකිල්ලක් වගේ දෙයක් තියෙනවා නම් බැංකුව ආරක්ෂා වෙන්න ඕන. යම් සහතිකයක් දෙන්න බැංකුවට මේක පරාටි ක්‍රමයටද විකුණ ගැනීම සාධාරණයි කියලා. පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඉදිරියේදී මේකට අදාළ සංශෝධනයක්.
Actor turned politician MP Uddika Premaratna from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna party announced that he had stepped down from his parliamentary seat today. The former MP in his resignation letter cited the inability to fulfill the aspirations of the public that he had initially undertaken as his main reason for resigning. In response to the resignation, the Communications Department of the Parliament announced that the Elections Commission will be duly notified of the vacant parliamentary seat with the House.
Uddika Premaratna, representing Sri Lanka Podujana Peramana, resigned from his position as a Member of Parliament. Earlier today, the letter of resignation of the Anuradhapura District Parliamentarian was tendered to the Deputy Secretary-General of Parliament, Chaminda Kularatna, where Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Yapa Abewardena officially acknowledged it. In response to his resignation, Parliament's Communication Department announced that the Elections Commission will be duly notified of the vacant MP seat within the House. In his resignation, the former parliamentarian revealed his inability to fulfill the aspirations of the public as a youth leader elected to Parliament as the reason for his resignation. The 43-year-old actor-turned-politician who was announced as a candidate for the parliamentary election in 2020 secured 133,550 votes and won a seat in the 9th Parliament of Sri Lanka. In 2020, Premaratna was elected from the Anuradhapura district while serving as a member of the Sri Lanka People's Freedom Alliance, a political alliance led by the SLPP, formed in 2019.
Well, a police sergeant attached to the Kottavila police station fatally shot himself while performing duty at the Matra New Court complex in Kottavila area today. The motive for the suicide is yet to be ascertained. Meanwhile, not too far off, a tragic accident which occurred at the Southern Expressway, also in Matra this morning, claimed the lives of 2 maintenance workers. With that, here's a look at more news across the country in brief.
A 52-year-old police officer fatally shot himself at the Matra New Court complex in the Kottavila area. The deceased, identified as a police sergeant attached to the Kottavila police station, was on duty at the police post at the court when he committed suicide. According to the police, the victim had reportedly shot himself using a service firearm. The cause behind his death is yet to be ascertained. In the meantime, a tragic accident occurred at the Southern Expressway this morning, claiming the lives of 2 maintenance workers. The victims died after being hit by a lorry travelling from Dodangadu to Matra. Subsequent to the tragic accident, the injured employees were rushed to the Karapiti Teaching Hospital, where they were pronounced dead upon admission. In other local news, 2 unidentified men who arrived on a motorcycle fled after firing gunshots into the air in Vellavatta. The shooting took place in front of a tourist beach hotel located on the Marine Drive in Vellavatta this morning. However, no fatalities were reported and further investigations into the incident are currently underway by the Vellavatta police.
Welcome back. We take you to business news now. A Japanese grant of 1.17 billion yen has been allocated for the dual purposes of upgrading the facilities of the Bandaranaike International Airport in Katunayake, as well as raising the Colombo port to be on par with the international practices, recommendations and standards. Now, this story is also talking about funds being provided by the government of Japan through the International Organization for Migration to further strengthen border-related health preparedness at points of entry, direct contribution to the control of infectious diseases, and the overall security of all passengers, staff at points of entry during health emergencies. As Sri Lanka's economy is mainly dependent on the income generated from international tourism and business travel, the government highlights the requirement for smooth operation of entry points into the country and building confidence among travellers, as well as arranging cross-border entry points to comply with international health regulations and movement. Under the grant, the facilities of the Maldives International Airport are also planned to be upgraded.
Let's take you to the stock market now. The Colombo Stock Exchange ended higher today after starting the week negatively, aided by gains in consumer staple stocks. The CSE All Share Price Index closed at 0.10% higher at 10,623.01 points, while the S&P SL20 ended at 0.07% lower at 3,055.24 points. Ceylon Coal PLC and Ceylon Tobacco PLC were the top top gainers on the index, up by 7.8% and 1.2% respectively. Trading volumes on the index rose to 108.3 million shares from 43.5 million shares in the previous session. Now, equity market turnover rose to 2.53 billion rupees from 1.66 billion rupees in the previous session. The diversified financial sector was the top contributor to market turnover today, while the telecommunication services sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth of 530 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 2.17 billion rupees.
Oil prices held relatively steady today as investors eyed the outcome of the Gaza ceasefire talks and whether OPEC Plus would extend its voluntary production cuts in March. Brent crude futures fell 28 cents or 0.34% to settle at $82.25 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were down 21 cents or 0.27% to $77.37 a barrel. Mixed signals echoed from the Middle East, and as U.S. President Joe Biden said that Israel is ready to halt its attacks on Gaza during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan in a ceasefire that could be signed as soon as next week. But Hamas officials said that Biden's remarks were premature and that they were still studying the case for ceasefire proposal. Elsewhere, eyes are on the OPEC Plus producer group, with a decision coming in March on whether to extend voluntary production cuts or bolster prices. Meanwhile, Russian authorities announced today that a 6-month ban on gasoline exports will be imposed from the 1st of March to compensate for rising demand and to allow for refinery maintenance.
Now, here's a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. Now, a high-level delegation from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development of Vietnam was hosted by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce recently to fortify bilateral relations between the two nations.
Meanwhile, Haley's Fabric PLC, a subsidiary of Haley's PLC, recently secured Eco-Label Sri Lanka certification under the textile and apparel category. With that, here's a look at more corporate news in brief.
In a move to bolster bilateral relationships between Vietnam and Sri Lanka in the fields of agricultural, forestry and fishery, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce hosted a high-level delegation from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam. The roundtable discussion focused on the opportunities for collaboration in agriculture, forestry and fisheries, and further facilitated exchanges of trade and industry models, establishing connections with business and industry associations in Sri Lanka. During the event, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development of Vietnam, Le Minh Hoon, said that bilateral agricultural trade between Sri Lanka and Vietnam has potential for growth and further highlighted the respective strengths of both nations to complement mutual progress and development. Haley's Fabric PLC, a subsidiary of Haley's PLC, recently secured Eco-Label Sri Lanka certification for its weft-knitted fabrics under the textile and apparel category. The Eco-Label Sri Lanka certification boosts market recognition for environmentally friendly products and ensures transparency through third-party verification and helps set stringent environmental standards. Speaking on the achievement, the managing director of Haley's Fabrics said that the certification is viewed as a dedication towards sustainability and further recognizes the commitment of the company.
And that's all the news for tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. I'm Indiva Riyamu.
I'm Mahesh Johnny. Thank you for joining. Have a good night.